Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. Reports have been coming in about a strange man roaming the area around Castle Stream. He's been described as a well-dressed man with infernos for eyes. Castle Rock PD has issued a statement warning everyone in the area to keep a close watch on unattended children, fish, and souls for the time being. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And Eve Gatto.
Hey, constant readers.
And today we are jumping back to our Everything's Eventual coverage, where we are covering The Man in the Black Suit with CM leading our discussion. CM, take it away.
Thanks, Josh. We are with a man, Gary, in his 90s, in the 90s, writing about an encounter he had in the 1900s when he was 9. And I want to say the number 9 has significance here, but it doesn't seem to.
I did clock that the fish he caught was, of course, 19 inches. That seemed...
Oh, I missed that.
What? What? No.
Do you not have the instant Pavlovian response to the number 19 in every aspect of your life?
Yeah, right.
Somehow, no.
Wow.
Yeah.
Literally every time I see the number 19 in anything, I'm like,
yeah,
I see.
I see.
Well, shame on me.
This book's fucking scary.
Yeah, it is.
So the storytelling device is that Gary is telling us this story that he has never told anybody, and he is writing it in a journal one of his great-granddaughters gave him. And this is not an easy task because of his advanced age and his declining health. And he's very clear about the fact that this will probably be one of the last things he does, and his intent is to be free of the horror of what he carried with him all of these years, a thing that he hasn't really spent much time thinking about consciously, but suspects it's still been there. It's haunting my dreams, probably.
He basically says it's getting clearer by the day in my memory, the sight of the man.
So weird.
And it's the stakes. It's so weird how the stakes become so high so immediately, because he's talking about, writing in this journal, someone's going to read it because it says it's a diary. And the grandkid who gave it to me, can't remember her name right now, but I remember every single word this guy said to me on that day. And every single day it's getting more clear. Don't like it.
Did this story make you guys think that we should all maybe start journaling?
Well, I did make a note like, oh, he's journaling, a great therapeutic technique.
Yeah, no.
I don't know who that note was for, because I know that.
For yourself.
Just
That's
a
what
nice
a journal
reminder.
is.
Yeah.
I am so wise.
It made me think that I want to do a variation of what CM does at hotels. And
Okay, continue.
nah. I think everybody knows what I'm saying.
You have to listen to The Mist to figure that one out.
Right. Taking like an old journal, like a leather-bound journal, writing this down, and then making it look artificially weathered and then leaving it somewhere in hopes that somebody finds it.
Well, I was going to go the cheaper route. You just made this cost way more money, because I was just going to write The Mist note on their hotel stationery.
Oh,
that's
right
why yours
in the margins
is cheaper.
of the Bible.
Yeah.
Oh
my God.
I can't write in a book, even the Bible. Okay, guys, there's a line here, which I love. Shade to the Bible, I guess. And he's describing old age as waves licking closer and closer to some indifferently built castle of sand. And I love this because it reflects the dichotomy between faith and chance throughout this story. And that, those were kind of the threads that I was getting from this, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, you said faith and it completely threw me off. My train of thought went out the window, because in preparation for this, so in Everything's Eventual, every story has either a foreword or an afterword with King's just little thoughts about how he came up with the idea for the story or little bits about it. And in the afterword for this one, he says that the inspiration for the story is a Nathaniel Hawthorne short story called Young Goodman Brown. And I was like, huh, wonder what that is. So I read it. And it's really good. But the main character is young Goodman Brown, a Puritan in New England in the Nathaniel Hawthorne days. I don't know. And he is walking through the woods, and he says goodbye to his pretty young wife, Faith. And so as soon as you said that word, I was like, wait, what did we read? And it's a really good story, but it does lead to the middle of the book, him believing that his wife is a witch and falling to his knees in the middle of the forest and yelling, "I've lost my faith," which
that's so good.
Really
that's perfect.
Nathaniel Hawthorne was writing before subtext existed.
That's amazing.
That's cool. So now that we understand the inspiration for Gary writing the stuff down, let's go back to the town of Motton near Castle Rock in 1914, which is a much different world from the 90s and almost entirely unrelatable to me in the 2020s.
Have we mentioned Motton before?
I was just about to ask. It sounds so familiar.
I think it's the town from Revival.
Oh.
I'm not positive.
I could believe that because, I mean, the beginning of Revival doesn't start as far back as we are starting now. But even in the main character, whose name I totally remember's childhood, the separateness that our main character here talks about exists, where neighbors are miles apart. And as much as you go neighboring, families are very secular and very insulated.
Motton was in Dead Zone. I think that might be where the rich family is. Or maybe not the rich family. It's
that falls in the hockey?
It's post-coma.
Gotcha. Okay.
That falls in the hockey.
I knew what you meant. Like, I didn't even question it.
Language is flexible, y'all.
Words mean things.
So there's a stillness and an isolated feeling to how he's describing this time, Eve, as you were saying. And it does a really nice job of making the experience that we are about to hear seem even more frightening than if it were to take place in like a bustling modern day time. In his description of life back then, he mentions a farmer in Castle Rock who chopped up his wife and 3 kids and blamed it on ghosts. And I looked for a connection here and I couldn't find one, so I don't think it's
so.
I love that it's not a literal
except,
thing.
Yeah, cool.
I love that it is just in this world, there's so much other awful shit going on that's a thing that happens. And in this old-timey time, you just hear the stories from miles away and you don't know the context. I think that's really fucking scary.
Yeah.
Oh man, we've really lost something.
Being so connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not terrified of all... Wait, yes, I am. Never mind.
So it is the day of the event, which is set up for us in an interesting way. The backdrop of it being a tragedy that occurred a year ago.
Yeah, the my girling of his older brother.
Yeah.
Yes. You can't see without his glasses.
His brother had gotten stung by a bee, and
on the
face, his father had run him in through the fields. They had been out in the fields working, you assume. And it was the only time he had heard his father take the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah.
Because he was screaming about his child being dead in this awful, inexplicable way because people don't know about allergies.
That's such an insane thing to forget. but I do like the fact that somebody later, like their mom goes into denial about it being a bee sting that could have possibly killed her son. And somebody from the church tries to share a story that, it happened to an uncle of theirs. It just is a thing that can happen to some people. And she covers her ears and runs out of the room.
And stops going to church.
She loses her faith.
There we go. So it's just nice because it having gotten this description of what life was like back then, as soon as you hear what happened, you're like, shit, yeah, of course he died, because
Mhm.
how close is the doctor? Not
Right.
close at
Yeah.
all. And there's not
A way to get there.
transportation. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So on this day, Gary has some chores to do. And when he completes those, he is going to get to go fishing in Castle Stream. And his dad got him a new bamboo fishing rod. And I love this part because he's like, he just got it for me because he would just do that from time to time. And it's a really
Mhm.
nice way to show us that Gary's family is nice and
It's
kind.
Yes.
it's so sweet. And like, I've never been a huge fan of the whole like Americana thing,
Mhm.
like fucking the Andy Griffith Show and Leave It to Beaver.
Mhm.
It is so uninteresting to me. But having this, the way it sets up, it's just this small family alone in the world in the fucking woods, I guess, and they're
Yeah.
just farmers and nice people that care about each other.
Mhm.
It's really sweet.
And it makes you like everybody,
Mhm.
so you care about what's about to happen, because it's not a typical story of, and basically my parents forgot they still had another kid that was alive, kind of sad thing, even
Mhm.
though there is a lot of grief identified right away.
Mhm.
It's really funny that I'm so used to when we have a somebody speaking with forbidden knowledge,
Hmm.
that whether it's somebody telling the truth or being honest, the horrible things that this kid is about to hear being said about his parents made me
Ugh,
completely
yeah.
forget the setup that establishes they are a good, loving, happy family. I just was like, oh, it's all dark, it's all miserable. I went down the spiral.
Do you feel better now?
I feel so much better.
Mhm.
I feel
Good.
so much better.
Good, because it's awful later. So before he's going to leave, he promises his mother that he won't go too far into the woods beyond the place where it splits,
Where the
basically.
stream splits.
And this is his description of his mom here is so clear, and it's really
Mhm.
interesting how it sets up a moment later on, just the way that he describes her in vivid detail. When he's actually heading out a little later on, he says it was looking at her in that moment was like the last time you saw someone, it was like a photograph of them burned into your memory.
I like
Mhm.
that he says, I saw my mother the way my father must have seen her,
Mhm.
as a woman, which I like. That's just, you see your parents, you always just see them as your
Parents,
parent.
yeah.
Like, just objectively seeing a person, taking them all in,
Mhm.
appreciating just everything that you love about them. It's just such a sweet detail that I was like, oh, she's gonna die.
Well, and the detail that he gives about her gives, a little later on, it gives a lot of plausibility to how he reacts to the
Yeah.
situation, that he kind of believes that. And it's just a really smart way to write that, to tell
Yeah.
us why he would believe that. So Gary tries to get his dog, Candy Bill, which
I
I
love
thought
it.
about Candy Brown and Dimity. No connection, but I like the
No
harmonies.
connection. No, it's her great grand dog.
No,
Don't listen to what I say.
uh this dog saved someone from a fire, who was then so grateful they named their child Candy.
That's canon, y'all.
That's canon.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's a very good name for a dog.
It is
the
a great.
thing.
It is a
It is-
great.
You are
I love
correct.
it. Okay, so as I was saying very eloquently, it's a nice king harmony to
Yeah.
have.
Mhm.
And strangely though, Candy Bill refuses to go. And I spent way more time than is probably necessary thinking about this. Like, is this by design? Was there a force keeping Candy Bill home? Or was it just to get some scraps? Because it also gives what happens later believability.
Mhm.
It makes the stakes higher.
Yeah, and it makes you think like, oh, the dog knew something. Because
Yeah.
it even says the dog barked after him to try to keep him home.
Mhm.
I like that this happened because
You mean
I
what, dog
remembered.
trauma?
Yep, I remembered the gist of what the story is.
Mhm.
I remembered the like premise, and I remembered that when I read it in high school, it scared the Jesus out of me, like really fucking bad. And the second the dog didn't go with, I'm like, oh,
So
okay,
relieved.
that's
Yeah.
not something that happens.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I recall guts being ripped out. but by who?
Exactly.
Yeah.
it has really, really hurt us. Still not
Yes.
recovered. Gary's dad also can't accompany him. He has to see about some cows.
Sure.
It's a 1914 way to describe an errand, but
Gotta see a man about some cows.
and that's okay though, because Gary is content to fish on his own and eager to use his new pole, so he is off. And as Gary's walking to where he's going to go fishing, as he's walking toward the stream, we get this really beautiful, peaceful description of nature and then the stream. And it tells us that everything is like beautiful and calm and fine, and it's going to stay that way. What did you guys think of his afternoon when he comes to the split in the stream? You know, that he's not going to go beyond, like just him doing that initial fishing and taking in the day.
Sounds fucking nice. I don't like fishing, but I
Me
love
neither.
wandering in
That's
the
like-
woods.
I'd go fishing if yeah, that's what you do when you fish. I've been fishing wrong.
Yeah.
You must have been fishing wrong. That's how you do fishing.
I'm just trying to make everything, like every moment, productive
See,
and always catch something.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's what you
Ugh.
have to turn off if you're going to go fishing.
You know, I'm not good at turning things off.
So the thing that is amazing is that he first catches this 19-inch, what is it?
Fish.
There's a rainbow trout or something
It's
later.
he keeps
But-
calling it a brookie. I assume that's just a fish that
Yeah.
lives in a brook.
Must be. And then catches it and is almost doesn't really remark about it that much, despite it being objectively impressive. He also just doesn't seem to think about it much.
Yeah, it's like I could take this home. Like that would be a successful
be it.
fishing trip, but that's not why I'm out here.
Yeah. And goes out and finally casts a line that doesn't get an immediate bite and lets the leisurely part of being out fishing begin.
hmm
And it's peaceful forever.
Yep. And it's so peaceful that, you know, as he's moving downstream where he's not supposed to go, he eventually just kind of relaxes and is looking up at the clouds and ends up dozing off.
And every second from this point
Yeah.
on is the most fucking stressful thing I've
is.
ever read.
How does he wake up, Eve?
Something jerks on his line, and he wakes up to see a bee resting on his nose. And I relate to this so much because I don't know if you ever have the thing where you wake up and you don't really know where you are
Mhm.
and it freaks you out really bad. Yeah, I do that sometimes. And if it captures that, like, I'm not really awake, logic doesn't really
Mhm.
exist for me right now because he sees this bee on his nose and he thinks, I'm dead.
Yeah.
This bee is going to sting me. He has a vivid, like, vision of him swelling up like his brother and dying. And then after all of this panic that we're like, oh no, he throws in, now of course I was 9 years old and I've been stung by bees. I know. I knew that I was not going to die. At the worst, it was going to swell up real bad. But in that moment of absolute terror, all I could think is, this is not only a bee, but the bee that
Yes,
killed my
yes.
brother. Another thing that is impossible, but impossible things don't really matter to a 9-year-old who's waking up from a nap.
Amen to that.
They don't matter to a 40-year-old who's waking up from a nap.
Exactly.
He has a strategy, though.
Go cross-eyed. Just stare at it a bunch.
and gently try to just blow it off of the tip of his nose. But he notices that the bee's not willing to go, and then it kind of like ruffles itself with what he perceives as a bit of impatience, and he becomes just far too terrified to do anything else. But fortunately, he's not alone.
So I had to read this twice because it describes the
Mhm.
clapping of hands, and when I first read it, I presumed the hands coming in front of his face and
Oh.
clapping it,
Oh.
killing it right on his nose. But no, that's not what happens. He
Mm-mm.
hears the sound of hands clapping.
Behind him.
Behind him, the bee dies suddenly, and when he turns around, there is a man in a black suit with
love
fire eyes.
Fuck, I love this.
King Devil descriptions.
Oh my god.
Go for it.
It's so much better than Fair Exchange. Like
Yeah.
that reveal
Yeah.
is all about like, and Fair Exchange does it with like a wink.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
sure.
But this just being like, there's a dude I knew from the second I saw him, he was not human.
There was no glamour.
No, it is just a man with empty eye sockets who is, quote, burning inside.
And he can't, it doesn't make sense that he's there because, like we said, this is a secluded town. They're out in the middle of nowhere. He basically would have had to walk like 30 miles from the next town in his pristine suit and shoes.
And nothing around him is disturbed in any way.
Yeah, the grass doesn't get crushed under his feet. He, like, later, continuing the description, in a moment, he sees his fingernails are like yellow talons.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we get to the fish part.
Oh, I love that as he's walking towards our main character, the grass under where his shadow falls withers and dies.
Yeah. Ah,
So fucking
awesome.
scary.
I love that he's so, like, friendly, though. He's like, hey, I helped you. Isn't that cool? Are we well met?
Yeah, this is a hard line to like ride, I feel like, in villains in general. And the like jovial devil is such a like cliche trope at this point that it is hard to nail it like right on and not be like Mark Hamill's the Joker, which
Sure.
is great, obviously.
Yeah.
But this isn't that.
Hmm.
It's this fucking story, y'all. Like, legitimately, I will probably be having nightmares tonight. I'm not joking.
Nice.
The eyes were definitely horrifying. The claw hands, yes. For me, it was a little bit later when we get a description of the breath. The devil like just blows a breath towards him when he's covering his ears.
It's like, it smelled like all gross things, and it just lists gross things. But then it also, there's something about like raw chicken or spoiled raw chicken. I don't know. It's like, that's unfair.
Yeah.
That's like, you don't need to do that. So
A barf hat on a barf hat.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Gary dodges the question and he asks him again, are we well met? And in response, because like you guys said, Gary knows instantly this is a devil. He says, please don't hurt me. And the devil's reaction is to make fun of him for having wet his pants because when he turns and he sees him, he's not even like super aware of it. He knows it happened, but there's no judgment about it. His bladder goes.
And the devil fucking huffs his nuts over it.
Yeah.
It is gross.
He's so
Yeah,
amused. Yeah, after he takes it in.
Well, the part that Gary is thinking, if I don't let him realize that I see what he is, there's a chance I can walk away
Like,
from
be
this.
cool.
Yeah,
Play cool.
and that's why he starts initially even responding in the first place. It's the only like what gives him the courage to start talking.
Instead of screaming forever.
Yeah.
You know what this just made me think is we never get any scenes between any of the victims and El Cuco, right?
I don't think so.
No.
That's what this feels like.
Mm,
Unfortunately.
yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit just for our listeners? In case they haven't read that.
Because if you haven't read The Outsider, El Cuco is the outsider, the monster who is a mass murderer, a serial killer
Major
of
spoilers.
children. Yes, spoilers. And the violence against his victims is extra repulsive.
Mhm.
And this man, the man in the black suit, the devil, is so scary and so fucking pure evil. And the things he says to this kid make me think that this is probably as bad or worse than the last moments of.
Yeah.
It's not a good thought.
Yeah, because all of that happened off screen. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Thank goodness.
you want to see that? Here you go. And then you're like, no, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Don't show me. Yeah, it's very effective.
Mhm.
It's It's so effective that Gary's just so scared that he's not just scared that he's going to die. He is terrified about what is going to happen to him after he dies. And we didn't mention too, just a cool detail, when the devil falls back cackling over his dumb joke about him wetting himself, the grass like shrivels and dies
under him.
So it's like there's the shape of a man there.
Ugh.
So the devil has come with bad news about Gary's mom. And this is where the details about how she looked in those last moments, last moments when he left the house and Candy Bill staying behind, really was where I was like, is it?
It got me.
Yeah,
it absolutely got me. The devil says, I'm sorry to tell you, your mom is dead. Same thing that killed your brother. A bee got her landed on the back of her neck. She swatted at it before realizing what it was, and she died clawing at her face and crying in the kitchen alone.
See, as a devout Christian, I know that Satan is the prince of lies. So I never would have been fooled by such a clear deception.
Well, and he starts off, he's like, no, you're lying. My mom's super old. She's 35. She would have been stung by a bee by now if she was ever going to be. But there's doubt. And I like that he calls him a lying bastard. And then in his writing desk, he's like, I called the devil a lying bastard. But there is that thread of doubt. He does kind of believe him. And the line here is haunting to me because of how sadly true it can be. He has that belief because he thinks that on some level, you know, we always believe the worst things our hearts can imagine. And we do. And we focus on those things too. It's great. So we get a brief display. I'm okay.
Go to therapy, everybody.
How that sounded. We get a
We're
brief
all doing fine.
We're all in therapy. Don't worry.
display of the devil's power when a fish jumps out of the stream.
And he fucking no-scope 360s the motherfucker. It's great.
I completely forgot about that moment.
Yeah, it's a fish, even like the 19-inch fish that this kid caught earlier. He was like, this is the biggest fish. This is it's not impressive because I'm a kid and I'm not impressed by things. I don't know that a huge fish is crazy. So we already think that this one, he's like, this one made that one look like shit. This one was a absolute behemoth of a fish. And the devil just gets real cranky and points at it.
Yeah, he doesn't like the interruption.
It's such a Bill Cipher moment. It's great.
Yeah, it like folds in half on itself and just dies instantly.
It fucking rules.
It does rule pretty hard.
But it does make him a little hungry now.
That makes more sense now. So he goes on to explain to Gary the poetic justice of his mother's death.
That she's the one who passed the weakness on to Dan, so that's why it's poetic that amongst all of her denial, in the end it was her genes that caused it.
He explains heritability to Gary in 1914, which is cool.
And then it heavily insinuates like, well, you should probably just come with me or run into the woods because your father is a sexual deviant, and highlights some horrifying things that will happen if it's just the two of them. Which again, forget. Very established loving family.
Yeah, we have been given absolutely zero evidence to think that would ever be true.
Right.
But is it because it's a king work? So he's...
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
It's because it's a king work. It's in the realm of possibility.
Yes. I love too, he tells Gary that when his mother died, she made the most wonderfully awful noises. And it's such a simple line and it's so upsetting adding the word wonderfully.
Anybody want to get Josh? You want to give it a spin? See what that sound would sound like. So I don't know what that means. So I need someone to make what is it? Wonderfully awful
noises.
Yeah, I need to hear what that sounds like, Josh.
Yeah.
No.
That's what it was.
No.
Yeah. That's what it was.
I'm sorry. That made me make an awful noise.
You upset her bad.
You slid across the room like I did force damage.
That was an involuntary reaction to that noise. It was the face too.
Don't
it was,
challenge me, and these things
I
won't
regret
happen.
everything. This is terrible podcasting, and I apologize.
Well,
But it's wonderful friendship.
now we know what the audiobook would be like. I think there is an audiobook,
Yeah,
but I
call
didn't
me.
listen.
Call me if you need it.
He also he also tells
Can't do it.
he also tells Gary that she wept as she died. And isn't that sweet? Because Candy Bill licked the tears.
Oh,
from
I
her
thought he was going to say
face.
that dog ate her
Me
face.
too.
I thought the dog was gonna eat her eyeballs because he said her eyes just bulged out like frogs, and I was like, "Them easy pickings for that dog."
Isn't it show Stephen King on the book where he hurt me, and it's everywhere. I cannot trust any moment with him.
Yeah, it's so funny because this book ostensibly has a happy ending.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
He not only does he survive, he lives a long, happy life, and the terror at the end of the book is the terror at the end of Revival of It Comes.
Okay,
You know?
we're gonna
Or
get
will it?
to that. Put a pin in that.
Yeah.
I love when Gary sees the devil do the thing with the fish, and then he's just like staring out into the stream, and he describes him as like having been putting on an air of bereavement. And when he turns back to him, all of that disappeared from his face. His face was slack and avid, like the face of a corpse that died hungry. It is so terrifying.
scary.
And it was where I was like, movie. I want to see the scene with my eyeballs. The
Did
devil.
they not make a
There's like a
was
short.
there Nightmare and Dreamscapes, that mini series? Did they
That's
make
the
that this
miniseries.
one?
I don't know if they. Made
I don't
this
think
one.
so. I think it was a standalone 2004 like 20-minute thing. And then
Oh.
I've seen a lot of possible, like I don't know if they're dollar babies or just fan made without
Oh, they're
permission
not anymore.
films. Because I was looking, I was like, oh, do we have a thing to make to
Huh.
another episode to do? So the devil tells Gary that he's hungry, and guess what's for lunch? Not a fish, but little fisher boys. Okay, this is the horrible part. Gary has a plan. It's not a plan because he sort of like does it without even thinking about what he's doing. But as the devil begins to reach for him to mow down, he reaches into his creel where he had put the other fish and just hands him, like in my head, I wanted him to like shove it in his face. He just hands him the fish. Like, how about this if you're hungry, sir? Everything's normal. Please don't kill me.
And he
And-
replies by yelling, "Big fish."
He
And
is a
then eating it
sucker
like
for
a
sushi. Oh my!
He has
When he
rows
opens
of
his
shark
mouth,
teeth.
yeah. Because Gary's like, I didn't know what I was looking at the time, but in like the 60s, I went to an aquarium and I saw a shark for the first time. Those were the teeth. except
Imagine
it was
what that
also a
aquarium
furnace.
visit was like.
Oh,
Just
do you-
standing with your family, and the shark opens its mouth, and it just all comes back. Oh God!
And as he swallows this whole, the fish whole, we can see it starting to burn because of the
That shit is
Yeah.
amazing.
inferno of his
Looking
inside.
down into
scales
his
curl.
throat is
Mhm.
like looking down into
Oh.
a furnace.
And it gets worse because as he's straining, because he doesn't chew it, as he's straining to swallow it, he is bleeding tears.
That's just.
I
That's
love
just.
it.
Well, me too. But it's a hat on a hat. It's
Well,
a barf hat on a barf hat.
If you try to take 19 inches straight down, you're gonna bleed out of your eyes.
I
Yeah.
love when Gary finally.
Can confirm. You're welcome, Devin.
Jesus Christ.
I tried not to. I hesitated so long.
No, I love that when Gary finally turns to run and he turns to look back, half the fish is just sticking out of his mouth still.
And he's still chasing him, but
Yeah.
I imagine that looks that is one of those hilarious, if not as horrifying as it could possibly be.
Let's talk about the chase scene because Gary reacts instantly. He's like, I am out of here. I'm so happy for him that he just takes off full speed ahead.
This foot race is so fucking tense because you are with him. Going back to this being him writing the account down because it's so clear in his
Mhm.
head. I love it because in this moment I imagine him being as tense, frantically writing this as I'm frantically reading it. Because every time he makes a little advance, there's something that sets him back or he takes a glance back, and the devil is just always so close that he anticipates the claws on the back of his neck at any moment. And it kept me so tense, because he'd talk about this marker, and I'd be like, all right, when you hit that marker, you're home free, right? No, that's just when the next thing happened.
Mhm.
And he keeps running and running, and later we find out that he ran so hard he pulled muscles in both legs, but never knew it until the next day.
That's such an upsetting detail.
But yeah, when he clears
The bridge.
the bridge,
Mhm.
and he looks back and he's finally alone.
He crashes onto the bridge.
Yeah, he does.
And
it's so scary, because even then, he's still in the middle of nowhere. He is still probably miles from home.
Yeah.
surrounded by woods, which now seem
Surrounded-
ominous.
Yeah, because he's like, I can't tell. I was so terrified, I couldn't even tell if I felt like I was being watched.
Well, he says he felt like he was still there watching him. It's fortunately, though, it's about a mile further down the road that he sees his father walking toward him with a fishing rod. And the scene of him seeing his dad and his dad seeing him, and just how he lets out that emotion and he runs to him, made me tear up a little bit. I was like, am I going to cry reading this?
How terrifying it must be for the dad
Yes,
in
I
that
thought
situation,
about
because
that
I can
too.
imagine this kid's terror being beyond what, like, this kid must be near insane.
And he's sweaty and bloody
And
because he hit
covered
his
in
head.
dirt, and he doesn't have his
and
fishing
he'd
pole
wet
or his
himself.
creel.
Yeah. And he's screaming
Yeah.
for his dad.
And he's saying, like, his
Mom's dead.
Yeah, Gary's like, Mom's dead. There's a man in the woods who told me.
When what a horrible thing to hear as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah. Met a man in the woods. He said, Mom's dead. Blah, blah, all these things. It was terrible, horrible. And his dad's like, whoa, hey, I don't know who this person was. Your mom is fine. I'm coming here because I was on my way to meet you, because the cow guy wasn't selling cows. That's the cow business. And I went home. I just saw your mom and left her. She's making us dinner right now. And he's like, what about your pole? And like that, he says, I knew no matter what, you can't even bother trying to lie to my dad. So if he asks me a direct question, I have to answer it and just find a way to say it. And basically he says, like, I know where I dropped it, because it's one of the things that tripped him during that chase scene. And he's like, all right, we're going to go back and get that stuff. And he's like, no, I have to see Mom first. And I like that his dad's like, you know what? 100% get that. Let's go.
He's very comforting to him, which I didn't expect from a 1914 dad.
Right.
Especially in a Stephen King story. And I appreciated that, because he comforts him. He's calm. He listens to him. He doesn't freak out, which it'd be hard as a parent, I would think, not to instantly also like go to level 10.
Sure. I get them not going to 10 right away, because when they are at the house, they do have a conversation of, I think he might have just had one of those nightmares like he did when Dan died. So they are used to some of these extreme outbursts, which also leans credit to the idea that him falling asleep and napping could have been part of this.
Yeah, his dad thought it maybe was a dream.
Yeah.
And he admits, like, yeah, I did fall asleep, because he's trying to keep his dad from going down there alone too. And so later on, his dad is like...
I love that he's like, I am never going to go back there in my entire goddamn life. And if you'd told me I'd be back in 2 hours, I would have been furious.
And yeah, 2 hours later, they are walking, but Gary brought something with him this time.
The family Bible.
Yeah.
Yep. Not just the New Testament, because that's not big enough. He needs this whole thing.
And this is back when like families kept their family records
Yes, that's
stuffed
an
into the
important
Bible.
document. Yeah. And so his dad's like, okay, well, don't tell your mom and don't drop it. So would one of you like to take us through what happens when they get to the spot where Gary met the devil?
Yeah, they walk through the woods, and the whole time Gary is like gripping the Bible as hard as he can. And they come across the spot where this happened, and his dad goes forward and like freezes and stares at the spot and sees the very clear human-shaped outline where the devil had fallen to the ground laughing. And he goes over and he smells it and grimaces because of the smell of sulfur. And he comes back and he's like, he has the creel. And he's like, there's no fish in here, so
Thought you said you
I
caught some.
thought you said you caught something. He's like, yeah. And the dad thinks it through out loud. He's like, well, that means that you caught it and you gutted it because I taught you to. And then that means that something came and took it. We have to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's this like very subtle, like the way he describes his dad's reactions to
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
is so subtle, but very clear that the dad is like, something bad happened here,
Hmm.
but I'm the adult and I
Mhm.
cannot react to things as though
We
they are as scary
Yeah,
as they
gotta be
actually
cool.
are.
That's where Gary gets his cool.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, he's like, he looks at his dad and he's like, I didn't like the way his voice sounded. That was when they get back to the bridge
Hmm.
and they help each other up onto the bridge. And his dad takes the creel and kind of looks at it and then chucks it into the stream and abashedly says, it smelled bad. And then starts walking back. And his Gary's like, yeah, I never heard him talk like that again. He looked a little ashamed.
Because then he was
I
like,
get it.
if your mom asks about it, you lost it. If she doesn't ask about it, we never speak of it
this
again.
It's a cool moment.
Yeah.
So this is where things get interesting. We're back in the present day with Gary, having finished writing down his story, and he reflects that he knows that what happened wasn't a dream, even though it very quickly took on that dreamlike quality, and that he survived by sheer luck and not because of divine intervention. And so I kind of wanted to unpack this a little bit and see what both of you thought, because he talks about his dedication to God, going to church, even getting his mom to go back to church after this. Like sometime later, he convinced her to go back. And basically, he's like, I've led a good life. But if it was luck that saved him, not God, so not a result of his faith, that means that he has no protection against the devil, except for luck. So should the devil come to him in his final moments, which is kind of what he's reflecting on now, what happens?
There's no one that can stop him.
What
now.
a dark thought.
I fucking love the line at the end where he says, I'm an old man, I am tired, or I can't run and my creel is empty.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, that's so good.
Yeah.
No, the last like 2 pages of this story are up there with my favorite part of the whole thing, because it is that same the dread of this is unavoidable. It's revival again.
Yeah,
It is, because I don't think in the context of the story the devil here needs to be the literal devil.
Right.
It is just, this story is this kid the summer before he experienced the death of his brother, someone very close to him. This is him dealing with, I could have died. I could have been the one that died at 9 years old in the woods for no reason. And now I'm an old man and it's coming, and there's nothing I can do about it.
And if death can happen for seemingly no reason, like, it makes sense that he would continue to feel that way. Like, it's, his mom wanted to hold on to, well, this can't possibly be it, but Gary's more pragmatic, I guess, than that.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's sad because he talks about, just his devotion to what he believes in, and just how easily he's like, yeah, but it wasn't God. It was luck. Luck is all we have.
I think it's interesting that, like, bringing the Bible with it ends up not meaning anything, whereas you think that there's going to be that talismanic effect of bringing it. And so I like that we never see faith do a concrete thing for anybody, not the way we see it happen in, like, Salem's Lot. And I like that because it leaves it what we all have to deal with in real life, the ambiguity of despite having had an insanely supernatural experience, he still has a question of faith, because at the time I faced the devil, God did not show up, God did not send me aid. So what does that tell me about everything else? And, like, I could see that doubt being hard to let go.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think it's interesting that to say that it was all luck, considering how many times he trips, falls, fails to get away, there's just no evidence that there is any intervention on his behalf. No force of the white or whatever it may be. But he would never know. But I like that the story leaves somebody, because often we do get that somebody who has seen a cosmic force of evil will often find some sort of balancing good.
Yeah.
If you're just left with
The
that,
evil.
you've seen the evil and that's all you've got. How much doubt?
Yeah, it's
lives
just dark.
there.
It doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't assume other things are real or exist. Like, okay, if I saw the devil, I'd be like, fuck yeah, vampires have to be real because anything is possible. I'm gonna go get bit. Okay, anyway, I think this is a good place to do our ratings
Yeah.
because I just sucked all of the you put that so eloquently and you just like created this really nice mood with kind of wrapping up this story, and then I feel like I
Nailed
threw
it.
up all over
Nailed
it.
the landing.
You said, people, if you're a vampire, bite me.
that should be my sign off every episode. Someday
People,
it'll
if
happen.
you're a vampire.
But only if you're a vampire, because I've said
But only if you're a
the
vampire.
biting stuff, like in these books we're reading, is my least favorite part. Okay, so it's okay if I go first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I realized in reading this, how I need to get into short stories. Because I think I've talked before about how I kind of struggle to enjoy them. Like even with Joe Hill, just it doesn't matter if it's King or
Yeah, me
anybody
too.
else. You liar. And it's too brief a journey for me sometimes. But this one kind of made everything click for me. You know, as I realized, like I was making my notes and trying to think of talking points for the episode. So basically critically analyzing what I just read. And I think like that piece of it is what I need to enjoy a short story. I think short stories are meant to be, you can take them in quicker so that you can think more deeply about them.
Ruminate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I had never done that the way I feel like I was able to do that for this one.
Love that.
So this short story now holds it's like a timestamp in my brain of something that changed in me.
Nice.
Love that.
Oh, it's like I have faith in short stories.
Wow.
Oh, shit.
Just like young Goodman Brown.
So I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts. It's awesome.
Wonderful. I love deal with the devil stuff. I love horrifying face off with the devil stuff. The overpower evil being foiled by a fish is so goddamn funny to me. But it is kind of classic devil shenanigans. It's always the pride of a devil is always the downfall.
Mhm.
So I do love that this is just, if you take it as a snapshot in the history of the devil, it's just a time that he overcompensated how wide he could open his throat. And ever since then, he never made that mistake again. 4 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
Love a short story. This is so fucking scary. It's got a stranger. It's got being in the woods.
Mhm.
It's so weird and contained, and there's no plot to speak of. It's just this one short little thing that happened in this guy's life that affected him so much. It upsets me, and I love it. 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts. And young Goodman Brown, also 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
Nice.
With a
bad,
bullet.
bad.
It's
young
not-
Goodman Brown.
Yes.
Baddest
Puritan in the whole damn
Okay.
town.
dang town.
Oh, yeah. No, I'll go to the stocks. Sorry.
That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode where we will be covering the Wastelands through Key and Rose. For CM Alexander and Eve Gatto, I'm Joshua Kahn reminding you, opal, diamond, sapphire, jade. I smell Gary's lemonade.
Why?
I hate that. Oh, don't enjoy it.
I've made a lot of sounds tonight.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to The Man in the Black Suit. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know your thoughts on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio or X at Derry Public. You can also send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out our Discord page to chat with us and other King and horror fans. The link for that is in the show notes. And as always, please check out our Etsy store for cool merchandise and our Patreon page for bonus content and perks. You can search Derry Public Radio on both of those platforms. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.